Hi, everyone. It's Stephen Hughes, your hardship real estate pro here on the YouTube channel again. Today, I have another special guest, Timber, who is a mortgage lender, but not just any mortgage lender. She specializes in divorce lending, which is probably something most people haven't heard of. If you've been watching my series of interviews with a lot of different professionals, you should know by now, obviously, that I don't just introduce my guests. I ask them to go ahead and tell us a little bit about themselves and what they do. So, Timber, if you could tell us a little bit about, again, yourself and what you do, I think it'll help us to get started.
Sure, of course. Thank you so much for having me, Stephen. I'm really excited to be here and talk with you today. My name is Timber. I am a divorce mortgage specialist. I have a background in doing nonprofit and advocacy work, working with a lot of women, single moms, lots of people going through divorce, leaving maybe really difficult situations. So I really have a passion for helping people navigate this really tricky process as a mortgage professional. And I'll share a little bit about what makes me different as a divorce mortgage specialist from maybe just a traditional lender or any other mortgage lender. When working with clients, whether it's one individual or both parties in the divorce, I use a framework called divorce mortgage guidance, which is a process that is designed to first really understand the clients and their unique case and their unique situation and really get a feel for where they're at, not only financially, but also emotionally, because this is such an emotional process. Money and finances are inherently emotional in a lot of ways. So I really like to get to know my clients as best I can as early as possible in their divorce process. Oftentimes, I actually will consult with people before they've even taken steps towards divorce. They're just trying to explore all of their options, or they want to know if it's a woman, for example, she wants to know if she does move forward with divorce, what's going to happen with her house? Is she going to be able to stay in her house with her children? There's so many questions that start to swirl around. And my job on the mortgage side of things is to help provide some clarity to their situation and hopefully offer some peace of mind or at least help them start taking some steps early on in the process to save them some headaches later. So we start with the kind of the emotional side and really getting to know the clients. And then we want to move into the logistical side of things to help the clients. Ideally, I could work with, like I said, both parties in the situation, but sometimes it might only be one of the parties. But we want to help them make really informed decisions based on the facts and their specific situation. Just because their friend or their neighbor was able to keep their house in their divorce doesn't mean that that is necessarily a possibility. And as you know, as a real estate agent and being in our industry the last couple of years, affordability is a huge issue for a lot of our buyers in any scenario. So I can really help the clients weigh all of their options. Maybe they do qualify to refinance and stay in their home, but maybe that isn't the best thing for them and their kids, especially if it's a woman and a mom. You know, does she want to take on the mortgage and this big family home herself if she's going to have to work two jobs and be stressed all of the time? Is that going to be the best thing for her and her kids? So I think my experience in working with folks going through this situation allows me to have some insight into the type of questions and conversations that we should be having as we go through the process.
A story I think I've said before, basically, a guy I talked to where he essentially surrendered the house to the ex-wife and such, and because she wanted to keep the house, and he's like, "Oh, the kids need to stay there," all this stuff, and she couldn't afford the payments. The house went into foreclosure, lost everything. Like
Mhm.
he lost money, she lost money, and everything because they were strictly emotional. And I think that's kind of the danger because what one thing I've heard a lot with the house during divorce is, "Oh, well, it's best for the kids. It's best for the kids." But when
Mhm.
I talked, he just was broken up about it. He's like, "I don't know what to do now." He's like, "I thought what I was doing was best." It's like, yeah, I mean, you think it at the time because it's where you're at, but all you can do is move forward because you both need to change regardless of what happened. There's everyone needs to change after a divorce. There that's a whole different conversation. But I said, I wish you had had a financial conversation because now the kids have to go through something different. that probably could have been avoided. And that's one of the things that I think a mortgage lending professional can give insight into. And I think a lot of, which is this is pretty general, a lot of moms need that insight to say, hey, this is the risk you could take because you don't want to lose the house and then all of a sudden you don't know where you and the kids are going to be at, even if you get to keep the house, because you might have to face that stress and anxiety a year or 2 down the road. And that's that kind of stress and anxiety to prolong that after the divorce. I don't know if a lot of people really want to face that, and I don't think some people realize that. And it's an important conversation to have. So that's just a comment I had in general because it's one of the stories I have from a while ago that kinda got me into doing this. But the
Mhm.
question I have for you, because again, people are always, they wanna keep the house. In your professional experience, how often is it that people get to keep the house in a divorce? In your opinion, I mean, how often is it that they get to buy out the other partner and stay in the house?
I would say overall, it's tends to be a better situation for everyone involved to sell the house. And sometimes both one or both parties are in a position to purchase a right-sized residence for themselves. Sometimes one party can and the other party needs to rent, and we need to put together a plan for them to, especially if it's a mom who's been home with her kids and she hasn't been working consistently, then that's something that I can help put a plan in place so that at least they know what to work on over the next year or 2 to get to a point to be able to get into their own home again in the future. But it really depends on the income bracket that the family's in. If it's a dual or a single income house, it's really interesting, if it's a upper middle class dual income household, it's a lot more feasible for one person or one party to keep the marital home and refinance and buy the other one out. And they might both have professional careers with good incomes. And, in those situations, divorce is incredibly stressful and emotional, but at least money is not as much of a stress in those types of situations. I tend to work with more folks that are not in that situation. So the money is the biggest conversation in their divorce, and if they own a home, that's probably the largest asset that they own, but the asset is not the house, the asset is the equity in the house. So something else that we look at is if they have home equity lines of credit or there's any other liens on the property. I have amazing title partners that I work with, so we can look at the title, the ownership of the house, we can look at what else might be owing against their equity. And the earlier that I can consult with someone, again, not to make generalizations, but in Utah, what I've seen is that it's typically the wife and the mother who wants to keep the family house and stay in it with her kids. The earlier that we can talk, the better, because we can get her working if she's not working. We can look at what they're thinking about as far as their agreements in divorce when it comes to child support and alimony. On the mortgage side, when it comes to using income to qualify them for a refinance or a new loan. We can use child support and alimony as income, but there are specific parameters that has to fall into. So they have to have been receiving it for a certain amount of time. It has to continue for a certain amount of time. So it's also really beneficial for clients to have these conversations with me early in the process because then I can tell them what we need to see on the qualifying side so that when they're making agreements in their divorce through mediation or with their lawyers, they're not writing anything in their divorce agreement that we can't actually execute. Because that's something else, like you were saying with the story that you shared, something that I've seen a lot is that people come to me after their divorce is finalized and they've agreed, for example, like wife will keep the house, she'll refinance within 18 months, or sometimes it's she'll refinance within 6 months or whatever it may be. But these are legally binding agreements. And if I can't qualify them for what they agreed to do in their divorce decree, then they're either forced to sell the home. Like you said, that just causes more like prolongs that inevitability maybe and the heartache. I call it house heartache. I really want to help people avoid house heartache. If if in fact it's the best thing for them to do to sell their house, I want to have that conversation with them early in the process so that we can start working through the emotions that come with that rather than just hoping like, well, this is what would be best for the kids. So this is what we should agree to do. And yeah, so we want to help people avoid making legally binding agreements that they can't actually execute. Or maybe it just needs to be written in a different way in the agreement, or, you know, she needs 9 months to be able to refinance the house and not 3 months. So having these conversations, like I said, it's really provides a lot of insight. And it's a huge benefit to the legal team as well. If the couple is working with a lawyer or lawyers or even a mediator, my team and I can help reduce the amount of discovery that the legal team has to do, which will reduce the billable hours and the fees that the clients are paying to their legal team. And I think lawyers are amazing. Their specialty is the law, their specialty is not real estate and mortgage lending. So they can, suggest that their clients talk to a real estate professional or a mortgage professional or a financial planner. But if one or both parties are saying, "Oh yeah, well she's going to keep the house and she needs to refinance within X amount of time," like we all have our scope of practice for a reason. And so having, if having clients work with me, and even I have really great insurance partners, I have really great financial partners. So I kind of have been building this little network of other professionals that can be really helpful to clients going through the process so that they can. I always tell people when I start to work with them, think of it as like building your own personal board of directors, as it were. Like they don't just need their lawyer. And in fact, in Utah, a lot of divorces are not litigated, they're mediated. So people aren't even always using a legal team. A lot of people can't afford to use lawyers. So they go through mediation. It's a much more affordable process. I believe it's a better option in most cases because then it doesn't turn into a legal fight or battle. I think the more that we can encourage people to try to act maturely and responsibly and amicably going through the process, the better. And that's better for kids too, in my opinion. But going back to what I was saying, if they're trying to, if a couple is trying to figure all of this stuff out on their own and keep it out of the courtroom, and not use lawyers and try to mediate things, they do need some really good professionals or advisors on their side. So, me as a mortgage advisor can be really helpful if they have a financial advisor or a financial planner, even if that's not something that they ever used during their marriage. It's really helpful to consult with a financial planner during the process. During divorce, you have to fill out a financial affidavit. So, that's kind of outside of mortgage. I really have tried to put together some other helpful resources because my service, my divorce mortgage guidance is free. As real estate professionals, we can't legally charge for consultations or anything like that with our clients. So we are inclined to provide the best level of professional service and advice that we can to our clients, whether or not we end up closing a transaction with them. So my service is free, and a lot of people end up coming to me first because of that. They don't have to pay for a consultation or anything like that. And so I have also tried to build kind of some resources and a network to provide people with some direction. My focus is mortgage and that's my specialty. So if they need more financial help, I can help direct them to some other really helpful professionals. But like going back to the idea of having a board of directors, when you're going through something like this, you also get a lot of opinions from friends and family members and people saying that you should do this or you should do that. Or, it's just, you need to have some advisors on your side who can be empathetic, but also, like you said, we don't want to know every detail of every, argument that's happening in the situation. That's not our business. We aren't therapists, but we need to understand enough of their case and their situation to provide the best advice that we can.
When I tell people, especially with divorce real estate transaction, is my job is to help you sell the home so you get the most money possible and to follow the divorce decree. This is truly a business transaction. I do not want either one of your stories influencing that. I really do not want to hear it. But I still tell people, hey, I know divorce is really hard. and we you relate in that way. But I want to go back to something you said near the beginning, and maybe this is a little indulgent for my business, but I also think it highlights something very special about being in divorce lending. You said a majority of the time with the clientele you're working with, it is in their best interest to sell because they're not in a dual income. Most of the time, they're doing that. Well, if that's the case, they're not refinancing the home, they're not doing an equity buyout. So you're really not getting a commission or anything. In reality, there's someone that you're putting into your client database to maybe follow up with 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, hopefully, maybe, who knows, buy with you. That's not like most other professionals, because the problem I get is, as the real estate broker, when I say, hey, a majority of the time they need to sell, people just think, oh, you just want a commission. You're just trying to get people to sell, blah, blah, blah. But here you are, you don't get paid by telling people, no, you just need to sell the house. It's in your interest for them to keep the house because you get paid a commission if they refinance or get an equity buyout. I mean, that's true, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
I want to highlight that for Timber's business for people who are watching this, because this is reality. Is she is literally going through their finances to delay her own I mean, really delaying payment for you and your own family, your livelihood, because this is just like what's right and in their best interest is, hey, you can't refinance. You have to sell. This is like literally what's best for you and your family. It's just facts. And I think for me as the real estate broker, that's why the first step with any divorce real estate transaction is like, hey, you have to talk to a divorce lending professional. You have to, because I think it is an important question. Can you refinance? And is this even an option for you to refinance, keep the home? Is any of that an option? I think it is an important question. But if it isn't an option, then we need to go ahead and accept the fact the house needs to be sold. And then that's when I kind of get brought into the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. That's very true. Sometimes what happens is, even if they qualify on paper, we're going to have a conversation about what their day-to-day budget actually looks like. Again, just helping them think through, well, how stressed are you going to be about making that mortgage payment? How much are you going to be working? Is that going to be best for your kids? Have you asked your kids if they want to be in this house after the marriage is over? Because it's going to be full of memories of their family, and now their family is really different. So again, it's not my job to talk through all of that with them, but I want to help just plant the seeds of those things for them to start thinking about. And again, the earlier we do this in their divorce process, the better, because they actually have some time to think through these things. And like you said, not make emotionally charged decisions that they haven't really thought through and been thoughtful about. Ideally, I could consult with both parties, even if it's totally separately, and I let them know that one individual situation is completely separate and private from the other, and I won't share anything back and forth that they don't want me to. Some people are amicable enough that we can consult a little bit together, and then we can start looking at their individual situations. And sometimes I'm just working with one person in the divorce situation. But what I'm, like you on the real estate side, especially you being involved in the real estate transaction with the actual sale of the family house, you have to be very, it is your job. I mean, it's your duty, to do what's in the best interest of both parties and get them the most money out of their house as possible so that they both walk away with, some money and be they're starting over their life. So hopefully they'll be starting off on a better foot if you do your job well, which is to get them the most out of their house. And for me as well, when we're looking at qualifying, especially if we're weighing things like, well, how much alimony or child support are you planning on getting? If one person's planning on getting it, that means the other person is paying it. So what does that do to the other person's financial situation? Because I want both people to be able to walk away from their divorce being able to, maybe neither one of them is going to stay in the family home, but maybe they're both going to downsize, whether they're renting or buying something else. So I want to make sure there's a consumer protection aspect to it. When I'm looking at their finances, I'm looking at their credit. So we want to keep their credit intact, and we want to make sure that they're both walking away with the ability, we're preserving their ability to own real estate immediately after their divorce or sometime again in the future, because we all know how important owning real estate is to financial security for families. So that is something that I'm taking into consideration as well is, we might be able to help them think through the amount of support that one is going to get and that one is going to pay and what's more fair in those situations. And when it comes to, there's a broader conversation to be had with an actual financial planner or financial professional, because sometimes what I've seen people do is that one person will keep the house and the equity and the other person will keep a retirement account, and they might have very similar values at the time of divorce. And real estate is an appreciating asset, but it's probably not appreciating at the same rate as like a 401k or an investment account. And when it comes to real estate, a lot of people, I did have one situation where they got an estimated value for the home, compared it to what they owed on their mortgage, and one person had it stuck in their mind, this figure that they felt entitled to a specific figure as their half of the equity, but what they weren't taking into consideration was all of the costs and fees associated with selling a home. So there's closing costs, title fees, real estate fee, transaction fees that come along with selling a home. And again, just helping them, consulting with us, or if you and I were working together, we would be able to help them look at the big picture of what that would look like. I think that it's important to help ground people in reality. Like you said, at the end of the day, it really is a business transaction. And the divorce professionals and the attorneys that I've worked with, that's a legal process. And the process of marriage and divorce is very much like entering into a business contract. And now you're terminating a legal contract. That's why there are therapists and counselors and professionals that can help people through the emotional side of things. We can acknowledge it, absolutely, that it's a really difficult situation. And also, I just want to help people stay grounded. And I think that the more information, like information is power, knowledge is power. So the more information that they have earlier in the process, the better off they're going to be. We might have some hard conversations early in the process, but that is saving a lot of headache and a lot of heartache and a lot of stress down the line.
I think what you said is probably the perfect way to wrap it up. And kind of what we were talking about before the video is in the end, what you want, especially in a hard real estate transaction that's involving one of the toughest things you ever go through in life, a divorce, is you want someone who, in the words of Dave Ramsey, has the heart of a teacher, right? And someone who's going to try to educate you as best as possible through this transaction. And it sounds like you embody that. I don't really have any other questions or any final thoughts. I don't know if you have any final thoughts before we end this interview. Do you have any other thoughts or questions, even for me?
No questions that I can think of right now. I just would encourage everyone to, take a deep breath. It's possible to find some clarity in the chaos of this situation. And I'll let everybody know that I have a website called divorcemortgageclarity.com. So they can go there to get a little bit more information about the services that I provide and how it can be helpful. And they can get in touch with me directly through.
Of course, and, I was gonna ask that before we left for you to give us your contact info and say your name and such because of course, we'll put that in the description box below, but saying all of it out loud, like, if you also want to tell us your phone number, full name, and
Okay.
email and spell that out, that again, that helps in the transcript and through SEO, and then we'll say bye.
Absolutely. So once again, my name is Timber Kalkbrenner. My email address is tkalkbrenner, TKALKBRENNER at cmghomeloans.com. My website is divorcemortgageclarity.com. And I'm on Instagram at timber_home. And you can always call or text anytime. I will respond as fast as possible to either one at 801-367-7711.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time. See ya.
Thanks so much. Bye.